do this.
And we begin our look at the race for Superior Court Judge, Position 1, joined by candidate Sharon Brown. Sharon, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me, Matt.
And first of all, I want to give you an opportunity to make your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you. And thank you to the League for having us here today. I just want to say, as a business lawyer, a city council member, mayor pro tem, and finally as a state senator for the past 8 years, I've developed a broad and unique skill set that would make me an outstanding judge and best candidate in the race today. I have a respect for the process and believe judges should always consider the will of the people as expressed through their elected representatives and the laws that they pass. I'm running for Benton Franklin Superior Court because I'm a constitutionalist, and I believe it is important for judges to follow laws as written and not legislate from the bench. Additionally, as a trained mediator, I know how to be absolutely neutral and fair in resolving disputes. Only by having fair, ethical judges who follow the law as written can public confidence in the court and its ability to guarantee justice be achieved. I received my JD from the University of New Hampshire School of Law, Franklin Pierce Center for Intellectual Property, which is ranked in the top 5 programs in the country for intellectual property law. I also did post-JD study and received a certificate from the Strauss Institute for Dispute Resolution at Pepperdine School of Law, which is ranked #1 in dispute resolution. Finally, a judge's decisions reach far beyond the courtroom, and people deserve a judge with real-world experience who understands their challengers. And I believe that I can deliver what the people are looking for and what the people deserve.
And for your first question, it's sort of a multi-parter. Do you support the need for things like veterans courts, drug courts, and family courts? And have you ever witnessed or read reports on the effectiveness of these courts? And if so, what would you want the public to know about them?
Yes, as a legislator, I have been very involved with the formation of these courts. And in Benton County, we actually have veterans court, and we have drug court, and we have a mental health court. We don't unfortunately have that yet in Franklin County, and it would be wonderful if we had the resources to do that. I believe that these courts are really important to reducing recidivism. However, that's not to be said that laws should not be followed and people should not be held accountable.
And question number 2, is justice better served when there are mandatory sentences for some crimes, or when judges have a little more discretion in their sentencing? And please explain your position there.
Thank you. I really believe that having mandatory sentences is a good way to effectuate a level playing field across the state. However, that having been said, I think it's really important for judges to be able to have latitude to perhaps go outside those ranges should they deem it be necessary. It's really a balancing act, and I think it depends on the case, the circumstance, and the totality of the situation and circumstances.
And question number 3, how would you rate the treatment and experience of the poor in our local judicial system, especially in the courts?
Access to justice is another topic that I have been incredibly involved with as a legislator, and I think it is very important that all people have access to justice under the law. We certainly have that in our criminal system. It would be nice to have that in family court and also in general contract disputes, business disputes, and things like that. And I believe that there are a lot of entities out there who have sought to meet that need, and certainly from a legislative perspective, we had funded those entities, but again, there is definitely room to grow to provide additional resources in those areas.
And before you go, would like to get your 1-minute closing statement.
Thank you. I know that there are a number of quality candidates running to serve on the court this year. While some can tout the role as a prosecutor, others their time on corporate boards and in corporate boardrooms, I believe I am the one candidate with the unique experience of having been a city prosecutor, a small business owner, and a practicing attorney, and a lawmaker tasked with listening to people and helping put their concerns into law. Unlike my opponents, I have a wide variety of experiences and a unique background that gives me the ability to fully understand the legislative intent behind the Revised Code of Washington, the RCWs. In addition to this diverse background, I'm also extremely hardworking and committed to providing the taxpayers with good value. Through my 8 years in the legislature, I have a rare 100% attendance record and have never missed a single vote. I pledge to dedicate that same level of effort as a Superior Court judge for Benton Franklin counties. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you, Sharon Brown, candidate for Superior Court Judge, Position 1. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And we continue our look at the race for Superior Court Judge, Position 1. I'm joined now by candidate Talisha Sams. Talisha, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to give you an opportunity to make your opening statement.
Sure. I'm Talisha Sams. I'm running for Benton Franklin County Superior Court Judge, Position 1. I grew up in the Walla Walla area and attended schools there. I worked as a nurse and a respiratory therapist at St. Mary's in Walla Walla. After leaving my job in the healthcare, I went to WSU here in the Tri-Cities and received my bachelor's degree. I attended law school at Gonzaga University in Spokane. After completing my law degree, I opened up my own practice. I've practiced primarily in family law, bankruptcy, consumer law, wills and estate, and kind of a general practice. I've also worked at the public defender's office while I was in Spokane. In between when I was in Spokane and coming down to the Tri-Cities where I'm at now, I worked as a prosecutor in Adams County. I prosecuted misdemeanors, gross misdemeanors, felony cases, and defended our convictions in the Court of Appeals. I am currently working at Adult Protective Services where I prosecute individuals that have been accused of abusing vulnerable adults. I am also a Title XI guardian ad litem, and I also work as a King County District Court Judge Pro Tem.
Great. And we'll get to your questions. The first one has to do with the court system. Do you support the need for a veterans court, drug court, family court, those types of things? And have you ever witnessed or read reports on the effectiveness of these courts? And if so, what would you like the public to know about them?
I think that we do need those kind of courts. I've always been the type that I believe that in administering justice, that it's not a one-size-fits-all. There's always room for improvement. I think that the different juvenile courts and the veterans courts and even mental health courts are a very productive part of administering the judicial system. One of the problems I've seen, though, when you get in smaller communities, the resources to fund those can be quite difficult, and also participation by just the attorneys in general. I have seen in the Spokane area when I was up there, these kind of courts be very successful, especially the drug court, because the whole idea, my understanding is that with the legal system is to rehabilitate people. There is a punishment aspect of it, but most of these are individuals that are going to be back out on the street, and I believe that the system should be set up in a way that helps these individuals so we don't have repeat offenders.
And question 2, is justice better served when there are mandatory sentences for the same crimes, or when judges have a little more discretion in that sentencing?
I believe that the judges should have some discretion. As we've all, I'm sure, seen when we had these 3-strike laws where individuals that were sent away for life for just minor crimes, but since it was a 3rd strike, the mandatory sentencing was life. I believe a judge should have some discretion. I also believe that they should look at the way the law is written, the cases as guidelines. But I do believe that they should be allowed some discretion. I do know that in our criminal system, there's usually a offender score and a range of sentencing. But to answer your question, yes, I do think that they should have discretion.
And question number 3, how would you rate the treatment and experience of the poor in our judicial system, especially in the courts?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, how would you rate the treatment of the poor in our judicial system locally, especially in the courts?
I think they're treated very poorly, and I don't specifically blame that on a particular judges or the judges in general. I think the system is set up in a manner that is to their disadvantage when they're trying to get through the court system. For example, we have a situation where someone commits a criminal violation and bail is set. Someone who is not poor has no problem meeting bail, where the poor individual stays in there until they're arraigned and then have their hearing date quite often. There needs to be a situation where I think more attorneys volunteer their time. There needs to be more funding locally so that these individuals have the resources to be able to put forth their defense and effective representation. I also believe that certain free clinics that I've participated in when I was in Spokane would be beneficial to the poor trying to get through the judicial and legal system.
And before we let you go, I'd love to hear your closing comments.
I'm running for this particular position because I think I can make a difference. I've looked at all my experience where I've practiced in administrative law, criminal law, civil law, and also as a decision maker in King County District Court. I believe that I'm more qualified than my opponents in this aspect. And I've practiced well over 20 years, and I think all that experience and my experience prior to becoming an attorney in my first career or even in the military service would be a great asset to my community.
Talisha Sams, candidate for Superior Court Judge, Position 1. We really appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us virtually here on this forum.
Thank you.
Continuing our look at the Superior Court Judge candidates for Position 1, Shelley Ajax joins us now. Shelley, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And first, we want to give you a chance to make a 2-minute opening statement.
Certainly. I am running for Benton Franklin Superior Court Judge Position 1. I have a total of 30 years combined legal experience in both civil and criminal experience in this area here in Benton Franklin County. I have watched all of my adult life, the Superior Court, the inner works, and how our businesses here are running. My platform is to bridge the distension and everything between Benton and Franklin counties and get the juvenile justice facility fixed. It either needs to be updated or it needs to be completely revamped and rebuilt. It has been a hot topic for some time, but the Justice Building is falling apart. It's never been renovated, and it's quite simply become a safety problem for the children. And I think that when we look at our future, we look at our children first. And we need to start with the juvenile justice facility. Things break there daily and don't get repaired. And there are no attorney-client confidentiality rooms with which the attorneys can speak to their clients in safe distance, knowing that nobody else is hearing. As a result, it's created legal problems and complications. And I believe that we need to really take a look at that area and see what we can do better for our community. Thank you.
And question number 1 has to do with specialty courts. Do you support the need for veterans courts, drug courts, family courts? And have you witnessed or read reports on the effectiveness of these? And if so, what do you want the public to know about them?
I would say that I am most definitely in support of mental health courts, the veterans courts, drug courts. All of those are really in a very specific area that are targeted to actually help rehabilitate some of the members who go through the criminal justice system. And if we can find ways to do that, that work and are effective, I am very supportive of that. I believe that jail doesn't always solve the problems. And if an individual truly does want treatment, it's appropriate that we put them in the appropriate place. For some, Jail or prison is the only route to go. But those who truly need help, who have fallen into the depths of the cracks and can't receive help otherwise because they're poor or they're homeless or mentally ill, drug addicted, those people are the people that are most deserving of our attention in our community to try to rehabilitate them and lower our recidivism rate. That should be the goal of our justice system. It shouldn't always be to punish. And while there's a healthy balance occurring right now, in prior decades, we've seen the pendulum swing back and forth between rehabilitation and punishment. And I think the mixture that we have today is a rather fair mixture of both.
And the next question has to do with sentencing. Do you think justice is better served when there are mandatory sentences for the same crimes, or when judges have a little more discretion in sentencing?
I think some judicial discretion still exists. There are sentencing guidelines for everybody to try to ensure that the sentences are fair for all the individuals across the state. They were seeing some disparity in those sentencing, and that's why the Sentencing Guidelines Commission came about, to repair that. The judge still does have the ability to take a sentence above the standard range or below the standard range. And generally speaking, I think that those are important functions for a judge to be able to have. In certain crimes, such as victimless crimes or drug crimes, things where there are no contact order violations, but the individual was invited by the person to violate, those are all really important mitigating circumstances. And there are also always exceptional reasons, like immediate recidivism after somebody gets out of prison and they are caught with another crime. And generally speaking, I think the attorneys and the prosecutors both work together to take a look at those situations and bring them to light to the judge so that the judge can make a decision. So I think some discretion is really very necessary.
And finally, how would you rate the treatment of the poor in our local judicial system, especially in the courts?
I would say that it's very poor. We have a situation where we take individuals who are homeless and they can't be in certain areas or parks or things to sleep at night. They have nowhere to go. Oftentimes our mission is full and they can't get a bed, especially in the winter. We run out of funding for them to get into housing or to at least get some temporary housing to be able to stay. And most of our poor oftentimes are mentally ill as well. And so there's a combined mixture of problems. And we need a new facility for the poor to be able to go to so that they aren't on our streets, so that they aren't running into the problems that they run into. So they have a catapult to try to get their life together and move forward, find housing, find a job, get their driver's license and birth certificates, the basic necessities. And we certainly just don't have all the resources we need here. And while we're moving in the proper direction to build a new facility, it will take time. And finding a way to have all people agree where and when a new facility should be built is very difficult. And it has shown to be difficult for our community. And we definitely need to work together to ensure that our poor are taken care of and can rise up.
Shelley, thank you. And before we let you go, I would love to hear your closing statement. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. And I think that what I wanted to impress upon you at this time is that with my 30 years of combined experience, I have also been recognized for my community service and pro bono work across the state, regionally, and locally throughout the years. And I continue to arbitrate cases, and I have been doing that on a volunteer basis for 10 years, which is the closest you could get to a judicial position. I have ruled on and decided various arbitrations, dozens of them. On top of that, I think it is very important for a Superior Court judge to have trial experience in Superior Court. Without it, you don't know how the structure works properly or what does and does not need to be changed, altered, or amended. And I have tried over 100 cases in Benton Franklin Superior Court, and I'm proud to have served our community, and I hope to continue to serve our community in this capacity.
Shelley Ajax, candidate for Superior Court Position 1, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Continuing our look at the candidates for Superior Court Judge Position 1, I'm now joined by Bronson Brown. Mr. Brown, thank you very much for hopping on our virtual town hall today.
Thank you.
First, as a candidate, I want you to give us a 2-minute opening statement if you have one.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Bronson Brown. I was born and raised here in the Tri-Cities, born in Richland, raised in Kennewick. The only time I've lived outside of the Tri-Cities is when I went and got my education at Central Washington University for my undergraduate, and then I went to law school in San Diego at California Western Law School. And between that time, got married, started having children, and started a family, and we decided to return here to the Tri-Cities. To highlight my legal experience, I've started my legal career as a staff counsel with the Kennewick School District, and as legal counsel was exposed to an array of different things. I continued my legal career representing the Kennewick School District, but then also doing some legal defense work, indigent defense work with Benton County. Continued from there and worked for Floor Hanford as a Hanford legal counsel for a year, and then came back into private practice and started into municipal work representing cities. And currently, I've been with my firm Bell Brown Rio since 2009, and we represent the cities of Richland, West Richland, and Pasco and do their municipal criminal prosecutions. I'm also the city attorney for Union Gap and the city of West Richland, and then general counsel for the Benton Clean Air Agency. And also I continue to represent the Kennewick School District as their general counsel. And I'm also the general counsel for the Grandview School District. And when I'm not busy with all of those folks, I do volunteer my time at Benton Franklin Legal Aid. I'm currently the board president. There we help provide access to justice and to the courts for people that need it and can't afford it.
And your first question is about specialty courts. Do you support the need for veterans courts, drug courts, and family courts? Have you witnessed or read reports on the effectiveness of these? And if so, what would you want people locally to know about them?
Okay, so I think to some extent, specialty courts are effective. For veterans courts, the judge is able to be familiar with a certain background of folks, and for veterans, they have a certain background. They've been exposed to certain things, and the court can understand that. And the prosecutors and the defense attorneys going into that arena, the expectations are clear on what's going to go on in the court, what the purpose of it is, and why those folks have been admitted to that court. For family law courts, I think I did see that when I was in California going to law school. In California, they had specialty courts just for family law. I saw that as effective just because there are so many cases going through those courts, so much need, and it was effective in that you just had a special arena of judges that were just focused on the family law dockets, attorneys just focused on the family law dockets, and it seemed to run pretty efficiently. I would look forward to something like a family law court at some point here in our community. And then the other specialty court that they are starting is a mental health court, and I think that is a big benefit because there are a lot of people that suffer from those mental health issues that regular court just doesn't fulfill their needs and isn't adequate for them.
And question number 2, do you think justice is better served when there are mandatory sentences for the same crime or when a judge has a little more discretion when it comes to sentencing?
So I think both. For mandatory sentencing, a lot of times a judge can feel, maybe he feels sorry for the victim, sorry for the person who is being convicted. But if you have a mandatory sentence, then he's bound by that and he sentences him that. I like what we have now where you'll have, for example, you'll have a criminal be convicted of a crime, and then with he has some discretion in a range, and so he could send. So, if, for example, someone's convicted of a certain type of felony, maybe with their lack of criminal history, the range is 0 to 4 months, and then he has discretion within that time to sentence someone. that's effective because then he can listen to the victims of the case. He can listen to the prosecutor's recommendation, the defense's recommendation, and then use his own discretion to then sentence to what he feels just, as opposed to a judge that maybe doesn't have any discretion. And if they're so stringent where if someone's convicted of a crime and that crime then carries a penalty of 3 months in jail or a year in prison, and there's no discretion, then that kind of takes out the reasons of why you'd want victims to make statements, prosecutors make recommendations, defense attorneys to make recommendations, so forth.
And question number 3, how would you rate the treatment of the poor in our local judicial system, especially in the courts?
So I've always felt that the poor, to some extent, are inadequately represented on the civil side. On the criminal side, we do have some very good indigent defenders, criminal defenders, and some of them are good, some of them are just okay. But on the civil side, what I've seen, especially serving on the Benton Franklin Legal Aid Board, is there are a lot of people who aren't adequately represented in the family law arena. For example, they may be going through a divorce or a split, and they don't have the money. Their spouse has ran off, has all the money, and now they've been served with papers. They want to keep custody of their children. They have nowhere to turn. They can't get a court-appointed attorney because they're not afforded one under the law. And so they are a lot of times inadequately represented. The only way they can be represented is if they're able to find a social services group, kind of like the Benton Franklin Legal Aid or something like that, to help them, or if they know any attorneys in town that would take their case for almost no charge or no charge, which a lot of times is difficult, especially given the things that they're going through at that time and their life's been turned upside down.
And before you go, we'd love to hear 1 minute of closing comments.
Great. Thank you. So I think for a judge to be really effective, they got to make sure they have experience and they've heard both sides of the cases and a big range of different types of cases. Like I said in my opening statement, I've been there. I've prosecuted criminals on the criminal side. I defended people on felonies and misdemeanors, spent several years as general counsel for several entities doing civil litigation, and some of those cases, complex civil litigation. As I represented the city's been involved in a lot of land use type cases. And because of that, I think that it's built on my experience. It's helped me as I go on the bench to be more fair and considerate and be able to see both sides. And then as a final point, I'm running because I want to give back to my community and serve the community that I've grown up in all of my life.
Bronson Brown, thank you very much for joining us on this virtual forum. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And the next candidate we're speaking to for Superior Court Judge, position 1, is Dave Peterson. Mr. Peterson, we appreciate you joining us on this forum.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. And we want to give our candidates to start some chances for opening comments.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to connect with you. I am Dave Peterson, and I want to be your next Benton Franklin County Superior Court Judge. I will hold offenders accountable for their crimes and ensure that dignity and respect are fundamental beliefs employed by the court. Regardless of the matters before me, I will bring integrity, fairness, and impartiality to the bench. I have a strong belief as your judge that I am a steward of your constitutional rights. I am the only candidate with extensive judicial and legal experience, knowledge, and ability to run your court effectively. I am proud of my years of service as a full-time judge for Pasco Municipal Court, as well as my 20 years of service as a judge pro tem in Benton and Franklin Counties Superior and District Courts. I attended CBC, University of Washington, and I graduated from Thurgood Marshall School of Law in Houston, Texas. I returned to the Tri-Cities as a deputy prosecutor for Franklin County. In addition to that, I have over 23 years of experience as a criminal defense attorney, civil and family law litigator, a mediator, and an arbitrator. My legal experience is much broader than that of my opponents. My wife, Dina, and I have been married over 27 years. We live and raise our children here in the Tri-Cities. I have called this community my home for my entire life, with the exception of my military service and to attend school. We attend West Highlands United Methodist Church. I'm a graduate of Leadership Tri-Cities Class 6. I was an adjunct professor at CBC. I used to teach in the Law Enforcement Reserve Academy, and I've coached the mock trial team at Tri-Cities Prep for 19 years. I have served many years on the Ben Franklin Legal Aid Society Board of Directors and associated with the National Adoption Day Committee. I will work hard to earn your support as the next Benton Franklin County Superior Court judge, and I will work even harder to maintain your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And question number 1 is about specialty courts. Do you support the need for veterans courts, drug courts, and family courts, those types of things? And have you ever witnessed or read reports on the effectiveness of these? And if so, what do you want the public to know about them?
Absolutely. I am a very big advocate for specialty courts. And there's 2 types of specialty courts. There's therapeutic courts, such as veterans court, drug court, mental health court. Our court system does not address the underlying problems that people in court have, the addictions and the mental health problems. Those therapeutic courts do an excellent job, in my experience of watching them and being involved in them, of addressing those. They have a much higher accountability for the actual offenders, and their supervision is much more intense than in the regular system. They're expensive to operate, but they address the underlying problem. And the results that I have seen are that they do provide a benefit that we don't see in the regular court system. The other type of specialty court are specific courts, such as family court or probate court. And I like those as well, because then you get judges that specialize in family law or probate, and they tend to be a more efficient and knowledgeable court process than regular court that hears everything. But therapeutic courts, in my mind, are a fantastic thing, and they should be encouraged.
And question 2, is justice better served, do you think, when there are mandatory sentences for some crimes, or when judges have a little more discretion in sentencing?
That's a tough question. And the reason why, I used to be a municipal court judge, so we did not have mandatory sentencings as other than for specifics like DUI. And we had full range of sentencing. I believe I approached every case with a unbiased opinion, willing to accept arguments from the parties, and with a race neutral approach as well. I don't think that happens all over. I used to be a prosecutor down in Texas. In Texas, when I was down there, they did not have mandatory sentencing. And I saw a disparity in sentencing, both by a jury that had a full range and a judge that had a full range, that I'm not a fan of. And so while I believe we can approach, the judge can approach sentencing in a race neutral, unbiased way, I don't think in application that it happens. And so standard sentencing takes that out of it. It gives the court a more appearance of a neutral position. That being said, our current standard sentencing has the ability to deviate up or deviate down based upon certain guidelines. And I think that gives the judges some abilities to adjust sentencing from the standards if it is appropriate. But standard sentencing gives the public an appearance that everybody gets a fair shake. Thank you.
And how would you rate the treatment of the poor in our local judicial system, especially in the courts?
I think the poor are disadvantaged in the court system and the legal system in general. And the reason why I say that is because there's a financial aspect to receiving justice. If you're charged with a crime, you can be appointed a public defender. We have some excellent public defenders in our community, but not all lawyers are created equal. Not all public defenders are created equal, and they would tell you that as well. And as a judge, I would see a difference in preparation, a difference in client communication with many, in the variety of courts, with public defenders versus not. In the area of civil law, family law, not having a lawyer puts you in an extreme disadvantage. arguing your own family law case is a personal battle. You need that skilled, detached, but hopefully passionate individual to argue your case. And oftentimes I would see that when people would come to court economically disadvantaged, they would take an attitude of, this isn't going to work for me. And that's not the way it should be. When you enter the courtroom, regardless of your economic status, you should feel that you're getting your day, and you should feel that you're getting represented like you should. And I think our system needs to improve on that. Thank you.
And before you go, we would love to hear 1 minute of closing comments.
Okay. As your next Benton and Franklin County Superior Court judge, I will be a steward of your constitutional rights while holding criminals accountable. I want to be a public servant in the community that I was born and raised in. I will bring integrity, fairness, and impartiality to the bench. I am the candidate with the most judicial and legal experience. I currently serve as a judge pro tem in our Superior Court. I have been a prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, civil and family law litigator. My extensive experience and rational temperament make me the most qualified candidate. I believe that my years of military service give me a unique view and respect for our Constitution and our rights. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you. I am Dave Peterson, and I am asking for your support to be your next Benton Franklin County Superior Court judge.
Mr. Peterson, thank you very much for your time on this virtual forum today.
Thank you, and you have a great day too, Matt.
Speaking to another candidate in the race for Superior Court Judge, Position 1, we're now joined by Sean Sant. Thank you very much for being here, Sean.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you for the invite.
And first, we'd love to give our candidates an opportunity to introduce themselves or say whatever they would like to say in a 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank, of course, the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to get out there in this very challenging year of 2020. 10 years ago, I ran for Franklin County prosecuting attorney to make a difference in the community where my wife and I were raising our family. We have seen tremendous growth in our area, especially in Pasco during that time. While we see caseloads increase over the last 10 years, our crime rate continues to drop. I have worked in collaboration with our local law enforcement, community leaders, and county residents as we have improved relations as a community and furthered our crime-fighting efforts. I have worked my entire professional life dedicated to public service. At the age of 22, I began serving the community as a reserve police officer with the Richland Police Department. I later worked full-time law enforcement with the city of Prosser before going into active duty in the Air Force. I returned to the community and started out as a deputy prosecutor in Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. This year, I serve as the president of the Washington Association of Prosecuting Attorneys, who have recognized my leadership and dedication to improving our criminal justice system throughout the state. For the last 10 years, I have led Franklin County's largest legal department, taking to trial some of the county's most serious crimes. I also manage our civil, juvenile, and child support divisions. This has put me in the front seat of all aspects of our criminal justice and legal systems. I have served on committees and work groups trying to improve efficiency in the use of our court resources. This work has included expansion of our felony mental health diversion program. I have also served as a public defender. This has given me direct experience defending and representing clients accused of criminal cases from homicides down to misdemeanors. This well-rounded experience gives me the edge of understanding both perspectives in the courtroom. Tough decisions demand the experience of the person who was elected 10 years ago to serve the people. My 22 years of combined legal experience as a police officer, public defender, and prosecutor make me the right candidate to serve as your next Superior Court judge.
Thank you, Mr. Sant. And the first question for you is, do you support the need for some specialty courts like veterans courts, drug courts, family courts? Have you witnessed or read reports on the effectiveness of them? And if so, what do you want the public to know about these courts?
I think these specialty courts are extremely important. We have a specialty court in a sense in our community as the felony diversion program, which is something that is operated solely in the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. But we also have another program that we've seen, which is the felony mental health diversion program. I have also served actively with participating with mentoring veterans through the Benton County Veterans Court, which is a program that is specifically designed to help veterans who have been caught up in the legal system. These programs are extremely important because, one, I think they have proven their effectiveness. And one of the things that we've done in review of our own program and the felony diversion program, we reviewed cases from 2011 to 2017. And that study found that 84% of the individuals that have completed that program remain crime-free. That is a very substantial piece of evidence that these type of programs can work. Our program was geared specifically to give first-time felons an opportunity to avoid a criminal conviction and be able to basically resume and participate in normal community activities with the requirement of restitution, counseling and treatment, drug treatment, mental health treatment as may be required. These programs have been proven effectively, and we've seen that through our drug court program as well. And I'd like to see those programs continue to be funded because they've also been able to save the more expensive or costlier amount of services through the traditional court methods.
And question two, do you think justice is better served when there are mandatory sentences for the same crimes or when judges have a little more discretion in their sentencing?
Well, as a prosecutor, I have benefited from being in kind of the driver's seat, so to speak, of discretion. I believe that discretion has really started in our offices. We can evaluate cases as they come in and try to distinguish between the merits of a different case. For a quick example, if you were to take a theft in the second degree case or a theft in the first degree case where the threshold amount is $5,000, certainly there's going to be a difference in that crime if it was committed with a $6,000 amount versus somebody that may have violated a fiduciary position and stole $1 million over several years. But what happens if a person perhaps did that crime because they were paying for health care of a family member or a loved one, and they made attempts before being caught to try to repay that amount? So I think we have to be able to distinguish the facts of the case. Both of those scenarios real quickly both met the threshold of being a crime over $5,000. They would both fit within the standard range unless an exceptional sentence was proven or made. I think a court, in combination with looking at standard sentencing ranges to get somewhat of a consistency, but also giving judges the flexibility to look at the individualized facts and circumstance of each one of those cases is extremely important. So I think a combination of those standardized sentences with judicial discretion is priority.
And last question, how would you rate the treatment of the poor in our local judicial system, especially in the courts?
Well, I think there's two questions. One of the questions that I receive as in my position as prosecutor obviously would focus a lot on the criminal side. People would raise the question of, do you receive the same accountability of justice with a public defense system versus having the same opportunity for retaining any attorney that someone desires? But I think the more prevalent question is access to justice on the civil side of the house. I have heard many individuals have inquired because you are entitled to expense at public expense if you qualify as indigent in the criminal sense. But what about those individuals that are facing eviction, facing landlord-tenant dispute, facing a divorce, and they don't feel that they have an equal position as their spouse that has now filed the divorce proceedings against them? What are their remedies? And I know there's a couple organizations in our community locally. We also have a legal aid clinic. There's also statewide initiatives that help promote the success of being able to provide those services. One of the things that I thought that should be explored would be able to expand how many attorneys can help participate low-income individuals. One way to do that would be able to create tax incentives so that individual attorneys would still be able to earn an income by offset of tax liabilities, but they would be able to serve the public that is standing in need on the lower income brackets. And I think that would best serve everyone.
And before we let you go, we'll give you the opportunity to have 1 minute of closing comments.
Well, thank you very much again for this unique opportunity to try to get out our message. I think one of the things that you've touched on is the importance as we look to the courts and we look at other options of trying to handle the increasing caseloads that we have in our community. One of the issues that you touched on was looking at some of these therapeutic courts. How can we help individuals? How can we improve accountability? How can we minimize the criminal activities, but also promote healthy and safe communities through criminal justice reforms or expansion of these type of programs. I have been in the driver's seat of that felony diversion program that we have expanded as a priority within our own office, and it's been very successful. One of the things that I think is important, and we consider our qualifications in this particular race, is that as prosecuting attorney, I have been responsible for reviewing thousands of cases while in office, and that has given me the opportunity to show that we have been fair and impartial in our administration of justice, and I'll do the same as a judge.
Well, thank you very much. That's Sean Sant, a candidate for Superior Court judge. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.